Hello and welcome to Mr. Shikluna's Intro to Art color wheel explanation. For this project, you will need several of the following items. 1, a piece of watercolor paper at 9 by 12 inches. 2, you'll need a pencil. Other things you'll need are preferably a thin brush for doing detail, a thicker brush for covering bigger spaces, a watercolor kit with several colors, but essentially all you need is the primaries, and we will go over mixing colors, glass of water, and a couple paper towels to clean your brush and dry your brush in between painting. First thing you're gonna need to do is draw your actual circle. Now, if you have something that you can trace the circle with, that is fine. So for example, if you have a lid that can fill the paper, feel free to trace that. But I don't want a small circle. It needs to fill the whole paper. If you don't, I'm going to show you how to do it by hand. What you're going to do is you're going to place your pinky mid-knuckle right here in the center, and all you're going to do is rotate the paper while you hold the knuckle firmly in the center and spin, and that should make, and as you hold the pencil, that will make a circle. So before I press my pencil down, I spin it to make sure it's the size that I want it, and then once I know it's the size I want it, I lay my pencil down, start spinning my paper, and boom, there's a circle. Okay? From that point, you need to divide your circle up into 4 quadrants. So as equal as I can, I'm just gonna by hand, looking at this, stand over it so that you get a bird's eye view. And I'm gonna give my best estimation right down the center. That looks equal, that looks equal. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. That looks equal, that looks equal. And then I'm going to take a ruler and straighten those lines out. I'm gonna try to keep my lines as light as possible because we are using watercolor. If you have acrylic at home or gouache at home or even tempera, you're welcome to use that, but it will be a little bit different techniques. So because I'm demonstrating with watercolor, watercolor is not opaque, it's transparent. And so it won't cover these pencil lines. So I'm gonna make them as light as possible so that it's easy to cover up. All right, see, now that looks a little bit funky. I drew it a little bit off, so I'm gonna actually redo that line. That's a good point. That is not a good point. Okay. After that, what you wanna do is each one of these 4 sections needs to be divided into 12 to give you 12 total colors for your primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. And what you do is, if you just went directly down the center, that would only be giving you 2. So what you need to do is, by eye, split this up into 3 sections. And I'm just gonna roughly look over this. Doesn't need to be perfect, but I'm just eyeing how big is this slice, how big is this slice, how big is this slice. And I'm gonna do that all the way through, trying to equally divide the slices. And then I'll use my ruler again, and I'll touch it to the point, or the center point, and I'll touch it to here. Oops. then I have 3 slices inside of each quadrant. All right, and there you go. Now you have 12, for the most part, equal spaces that you can put into your colors into each space. But we're not done there. There still needs to be 2 more divisions inside of here so that you have your tone, your hue, and your tint. Now to do that, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna put my pinky knuckle onto the center as best as I can find it. But first I'm gonna divide how big I want each space. So I think that's about even and that's about even. So I'm gonna put my pinky knuckle the best I can into that center so that when I spin it, it will be even. I'm gonna, without pressing down first, just check to make sure that this is where I want my line to go. Looks about right. Okay, there's one. And then now this one's a little bit more difficult because it's closer. And I'm gonna hold my pinky and I'm gonna just test first to make sure that the pencil goes exactly where I want it to. And there you go. So now I have my perfect hue, my tint, and my tone. And my 12 spaces for all the colors. So the next most important thing to do is to divide out first your primary colors. It doesn't matter where you do your primaries first, but it just matters that they're divided equally. So first thing I'll do is I'll just write red. This will be my red space. And then in between the next red and the next primary color will be 3 spaces. So 1, 2, 3. Right here, I'll do my yellow. One, 2, 3, and right here I'll do my blue. So now I have my primaries equally spaced throughout. And the next thing, it's easy to know what your secondaries will be because I know that red and yellow right here in the center will make orange. Yellow and blue right here in the center will make, you guessed it, green. And blue and red is no surprise, it will make purple. Now in between the secondaries and the primaries will be all the tertiaries. And the tertiaries are just simply mixing a primary and a secondary. So I always start first with the primary because that's the most important one, and then the secondary. So this will be, I'll hyphenate it, red, purple. The next will be red, orange. Next will be yellow, orange. And then next will be yellow, green. Next will be blue, green. And then blue, purple. And there you go. Your color wheel is all laid out and you have all of the different colors already ready to go. The center, so the outside, will equal your tone. The middle will equal your hue, which is the full saturation of the color. And the inside will equal your tint. So from there, now it's just a matter of mixing up some colors and applying some paint. Let's go. First, I'll get my supplies all ready. Got some water, got my brushes at the hand, and I'll keep my paper towels over here on the right since I am right-handed, and it's easier for me to reach them at that point. So I'm gonna start with mixing with my bigger brush. I'll just keep the small brush in the water, and I'll try to put this right here, and I'll move it down actually to show you how to mix color before I start applying it. And with watercolor, what you want to do is you want to get some water. We'll start with red. You want to get some water in the color, and you're going to have to work it in a little bit. So I just add a generous amount of water in there so that it starts making the paint wake up. And then I'm going to take my brush and just like almost as I was using sandpaper, I'm just going to keep rubbing it and rubbing it and rubbing it until it starts getting thicker and thicker and thicker. The thicker you get it, the darker it's going to be, the more pure of that color, which will make it the brightest hue. Okay, so I'm still working it. This might seem like a long time, but it's worth it when you actually get the color nice and bright. So sometimes if I know exactly what colors I'm gonna use, I might take water and put it on the blue and then put it on the yellow pre-hand so that the water starts waking up the paint so that when I go in here to do this, it will already be soft and malleable, ready to paint. For right now, I'm just gonna start with this red. And since we're right here and this is in the center, I'm gonna start with my first layer, nice and slow, and I'm gonna change the direction of the paper so that I don't have to really, so I make the paper work for me and I'm not working for the paper. It's easier with these flat brushes to always get a nice clean edge by pulling against the edge. Oops, see, and then I accidentally went over, that was my bad. So stop a little bit beforehand, turn your paper again, load up your brush just a little bit. There you go. There's your fully saturated red square. Okay, from that point, I'm just gonna tilt this in here so you can see, I already have tons of red on this brush, and if I wanna make my tint, all I'm gonna have to do is dip my brush in the water, pull it out here, so that there's tons of water added onto it. And now because I'm going to a smaller area, this is a perfect time to use my smaller brush. Since my brush was already soaking in water, it has lots of water on the bristles, I just pull out some of this red, make sure it's really, really watered down by pulling it away and kind of mixing it as I'm adding, or the water's adding to it. And I can see that this is, if I look at the bristles, you might not be able to see it, but it's pretty light, so it's probably right where I want it. Now be aware, since this is still wet, if I paint directly against that line, that dark saturated red is gonna flow right into this new area. So I'm gonna actually paint there last as this dries. If you have a hair dryer, it's a great tool for drying paint really quickly. So as I spread that, you can see already that it's nice and light comparative to over here. Now I'm gonna leave a little space right there so I don't bleed that in, but I'm gonna paint the rest of it nice and clean. And it's okay to leave that little space, as long, it might even make it look really nice and clean to have a little section in between there. So I'm just gonna leave that little space right there. Now, so now I have my full saturated watercolor, I have my tint done, and now I'm just gonna go straight into adding my tone. So I'm gonna clean my brush in the water. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but basically I'm just cleaning my brush, right? I kind of drag it along the top to get as much water out, and then I immediately come over to my paper towel and I dab it this to get as much of that out as I can. So my brush is relatively dry, but it's still gonna be damp. Then, once again, I have to load up my color or my water, and I'm gonna add it to my black right here and start waking up my black. Now, usually, if this wasn't black, if this was any other color, I would wash out my water before I added this red color water to this. But because it's black, the black's always more dominant and you won't see the red inside of this. But if I was using yellow or if I was going to blue, I'm gonna wash that water out and clean my brush every single time, because any little pigment that you have left in the bristles is gonna affect the color when you put it down on the paper. So I'm just waking up this black. And remember, or actually maybe you don't remember, but a little bit of black goes a very long way. So you don't need too much. But what I do want to make sure is that I have a really strong saturated red, and then I want to add that black to that. So since I already have a little bit of black right here, I'm just going to pull the black out right there. And then I'm going to clean this brush really, really good. Beat the devil out of it. Drag it across the top. Clean it. And I can always tell how clean my brush is because I literally just wiped it right there and there was no color inside of it. So that's one of the importances of using your paper towel on the regular. And you don't have to use a paper towel. You could use like an actual cleaning cloth or an old shirt or anything that you have. Okay, so I'm just, re-adding a little bit of water to this. It dried up a little bit, making sure it gets nice and deeply saturated. I want this to be as red as possible with the black added to it. Now I'm gonna pull that up here because this was my darkest area. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take a dabble of that black and I'm gonna pull it in here and I'm gonna mix it. And it already changed the color to more of a maroon. I'm gonna take another dabble and I'm gonna mix it again. Now it became a deeper maroon. I'm gonna add a little bit more. You just add a little bit at a time because if you go too quick, you can't take away the black, but you can always add more. That's starting to look like a color that I really like. Reminds me of rust on an old car. Right, so that's about perfect, right where I want it. Now I'm gonna come in here, going very slowly so that I don't make mistakes. I'm gonna pull straight across, leaving a little bit of a space. Stop beforehand, see I already almost went over. I did a little bit. Then I'm gonna clear my space a little bit, move my paper. Oh man, and there you go, first mistake, Mr. S. What are you doing? Look at that. It was on my finger. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Just dab it. You might be able to actually add, if you have a clean brush, this is a good little learning experience. A lot of water. You add a little bit of water on there, like that. And then you use your paper towel, kind of dab it.
What I feel about myself, I feel there's the unknown. There's things
water.
I don't know, and that's what I'm striving for. To say that I
dab it, and you might be able to make it minimal as opposed to having so much. But this is why you're supposed to be careful. And here I am making a mess. Okay, so back to this though. So now I just got my brush all wet. I need to clean it off. I need to get all the water out of it because I want it to be nice and saturated. So I'm gonna dry this brush out as much as possible before I add it back to that rust color paint that I'm gonna continue painting. Alright, load up my brush with all this rust color, and then I'm gonna turn my paper without adding more mistakes. And forgive me, I'm working in kind of a tight spot because I'm trying to record with two different cameras. So, nice and slow, pull it against the edge, stop, load it back up with some paint. Nice and slow, pull it against the edge, stop, load it back up with paint. Turn my paper again, nice and slow. Center done. And there you have it. That is one color out of the 12 that needs to be done. So that was red. I'm gonna actually still continue to go through yellow, blue, and my secondaries, but I might actually just time lapse it to make it a little bit more interesting to watch. Thank you very much.